SpeakUp Africa is a digital platform that creates space for digital conversations to be made, specifically from end-to-end usage, from the users of the technological spaces, to the producers of it, to the creators, to the innovators, to the labor rights, to the policy increments, to governance, and all other technological dimensions. This is SpeakUp Africa. I am Zaha Speaks. We inform, engage, and empower.
Welcome to SpeakUp Africa for yet another insightful and engaging conversation. I love the way you've been keeping it up here and engaging with us. And that is all we are all about here at SpeakUp Africa. And today we want to talk about the big numbers, the zeros in the banks, the zeros post the ballot box, and what that really means for us, because we are looking forward to seeing more people, which means more numbers show up for the next general elections. And today I have somebody who I respect so much. I hold in very high regards. He's a data analyst and he loves numbers because numbers quantify the reality of things on the ground. OKITE LINUS, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Wendy. I'm delighted to be here. I look forward to us having a good conversation in terms of how the current political space is and how it is going to influence the next general election.
Fantastic.
And we look forward to also showing that the next general election is not in isolation. It can be predicted vis-a-vis what is going on in the country today and even in the past. Thank you very much.
Great. And thank you so much for being here, by the way. Thank you so much and bringing the numbers more to a realistic perspective for us. Let's start it off from a place of what does the demographic of voters look like for us in the 2027 general elections?
When we talk about the word demographics, it's quite wide. And in the Kenyan election context, we don't really capture a lot of demographics. In other jurisdictions, you realize that when elections are done, we are then able to even get data in terms of how many women voted for a particular candidate, how people of what age, people of what income brackets voted for which candidates. But that is a challenge we have in the Kenyan political space. The main, when we look at our elections, there are two things that come out very clearly. One, we tend to look at our elections in terms of tribe. So that usually is the main indicator in terms of any person looking forward to, say, looking at gubernatorial, presidential, or even MP and MCA is looking at the demographics of the clans and what have you, okay? That is large and by the main demographic that we look at. But for an aspirant, in my view, we would need to, for those who are looking at for 2027, you would need to look at it in terms of numbers per county.
Okay.
Because what the IEBC is looking at, we'll be releasing to us the results in terms of who voted in what county, right? And so I want to differ a little bit with the political analysts that have looked at tribe majorly. Because if you ask somebody a question, how many Luos, for instance, voted in Kiambu County, then that is a very difficult question to answer, especially with the way our results are being released. So we need to look at the numbers from a county perspective. Which regions, which counties are going to give what numbers, and how are those regions going to influence the outcome of those elections. The second demographic that we will definitely play a key role in the next election is the age demographic. As at today, that is the data up to 2024, we are looking at the active voter forms about 59.4% of the Kenyan population. That is, I'm talking about those who are aged between 15 today and 65.
Why 15?
Because any serious aspirant looking forward towards 2027 election has to look at that voter today. For the person who is aged,
will they be 18?
the person who is aged 16. The person is aged 16 today.
Right.
The data I'm giving you is actually last year data.
Okay.
So the person was aged, say, 14 in 2022. That person is a key voter in the next election.
General election, I
so
hear
any
you.
serious aspirant looking forward to vying presidential or even county elections or at a member of parliament, any election has to know that demographic is going to play a very key role, okay? So if you look at those numbers, we are talking about a potential voter bracket of about 6 million plus. Potential.
Yeah.
Not all of them will probably register as voters, but we are having a potential 6 million plus voters that are going to be freshly registered as a new voter, somebody who did not actually participate in the previous election. So yes, the age factor is going to be a very critical factor.
Okay. OKITE, you've brought up so many key points. Number one, where do we stand with the tribal lines that have been so pronounced in previous elections? And I think up until you spoke about it, it's been a subtle reality that, by the way, our demographics have never been much about the numbers, but much about the tribes. You know, watu wa mlima, watu wa wapi, waluya, you know, but we never really get to think about the numbers. Let's take a hold on that and come back to, you've seen the shift in the young people.
Yes.
Especially the protest that we had last year. We saw very many young people come out and in large numbers.
Yes.
And I had never even thought about, as you gun up momentum towards the next general elections, you should also be looking at the people who will be of age to vote there. So we are hoping we will have new voters in the general election 2027.
Yes.
So what's the prediction? What numbers are we looking to have for new voters for that election? And how does it affect the political climate?
Yes, when you're looking at, you've brought out two things. One, the aspect of the young people, and I think this is very important because they have far much been wished away. There is a notion that the older generation are more loyal voters and the young people actually yap and don't vote.
Is it not true though, OKITE?
So was it true before? Probably yes.
Probably
yes.
Okay.
Because I'm telling you, as I'll tell you, if you look at the numbers right from 1992, unless you get the information from the ECK and current IEBC database, it's very difficult to predict that out of the 7.1 million votes that say Ruto got, how many were 18-year-olds?
Okay, wait. Let me talk as a layman.
Yes.
I'm no data analyst.
Yes.
You do that job. So most people have been singing how in the past elections, our number one, our population is made up of 75% of young people, right? But it was only about 30 to 34 who were registered voters. And even in those numbers, we had voters who were young people who didn't show up to vote, right? So that is where I was asking. For me, I think it's a fact. It's true that young people have been very vocal. And when it comes now to the decision-making part of it, which is now practicing your voters' right, they don't show up. They never used to participate. But I guess that's going to change. Let me bring it back to you.
When you're looking at politics away from the numbers, politics is about perception. And it is the business of those in politics to make you believe a certain thing. So if somebody says that young people don't vote, okay? So you ask them that out of the 14 point something million voters last year, how many of them were young? How many of them were 65 and above? How many of them were, say, 30 years of age? That number is left for those within the IEBC quotas to be able to answer, not a layman, okay? So now, that is the first angle I wanted to bring out very clearly, that there are perceptions we are given. Now, there are things that are changing very fast in our economy and democracy. When in the run-up to the June 2024, you saw the way the young people were wished away. We had people saying these are people who just do what? Take KFC, who are just on their the iPhones, and they're just on Twitter, Twitter Spaces. And nobody actually thought that these people would be able to come out and protest. Okay? But we saw it differently. No protest in this country has ever been bigger than what we saw.
True. It was a movement for
and
sure.
not only that, even the spaces they occupied, nobody has ever dared go to parliament.
Yeah.
Okay? So it was serious. So the question is, are the young people willing to carry that anger to the elections? I think yes. Are the young people going to forget and say, now let's leave our older people to do the work of voting? I doubt. So I think any person who is wishing away the young people today, that person is committing a political suicide. These young people are going to get out. They are going to vote. In fact, I think the Gen Z are going to vote much more than even the millennials. Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to vote much more than the millennials. I think so.
I think because also they were really, they were involved in the awakening of this time.
True.
So
Yes.
even having that Gen Z name stuck on this awakening will force them to just be there and participate.
And they will mobilize themselves. Yes. They will mobilize themselves. They will demand for accountability from their fellows. They're going to ask, Wendy, have you voted?
Yeah.
So that is going to take place.
Yeah.
Something which never used to take place in when the millennials, per se, were actually voters. So I think the young generation, nobody should wish them away. Yes.
And I think also, OKITE, because when we came out, we demanded for immediate action.
Yes.
But we were told, you know what, we have systems in place. What you do is wait for the next general election. You know, that's how we do it constitutionally. And I think that will make people, we are really waiting for that time to come.
Yes.
So truthfully, there have been trends in the past that have helped politicians or people who are political aspirants and looking to get into these spaces predict how they can campaign, number one, to be very effective, number two, to get the numbers and the votes.
Yes.
As much as data analysts, you are trying to look at different ways to really predict the outcomes.
Yes.
Are there any certain trends that a politician or a political aspirant can adopt to help them try and be as effective as possible and also get the right numbers for themselves? Let's put away the tribe, talk numbers, patterns, and trends that have been there in the past.
Thank you. I think the answer is yes. You look at it from 1992, we had 7 million voters casting on the ballot, okay? You go to 1997, it went to about 9 million. You go to 2002, about 14 million. The 2007 elections were actually crazy. If you look at the numbers and even the turnout at 7-something%. But when you come to 2013, again, you look at the numbers, around 12 million people voted. So, and if you looking at not only those who voted, but you also need to look at those who are registering as voters, okay? So looking at from, say, 2007, around 14 million registered voters. 2017, we were at around, let me talk about 2022, at 22 million. Then we're at 19 million. So there's always been an increase, okay? If you look at the population of Kenya today, vis-a-vis what is being predicted to be the population of Kenya in 2027, we are looking at the population of Kenya in 2027 to be around 55.7 million.
Okay.
Now, out of that number, those who will be eligible to vote as at that time will be around 59.4% of that vote. Those are the active people.
Okay.
Those who are aged, as I told you, those who are aged 15 to whatever. to around 65. Those above 65 are actually 2% of the voters.
Okay, so let me ask you.
Yes.
I've never thought about it, but when you said up to whatever age, I've asked myself, is there a cap as to what age someone can be a voter?
Yes.
Like when you age?
You know, for you to register as a voter,
Yeah.
you must have an identity card.
That's 18.
That's 18.
So is there a place where it's like now you're too old to vote, or
No,
it's
no, no,
until
no.
death does your part?
No, until death does your part.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So when you look at those numbers, that means that potentially we are looking at around 35 million Kenyans eligible to vote as at 2027, if we're predicting that, okay? But those, historically, when you look at those who are potentially voters versus those who will register as voters,
And those
which is
who
also
will
different from those who will vote. So I'm looking at potentially we could have around 23.5 million registered voters in the next general election. So when you have 23.5 million, and then you ask yourself, how many possibly could vote? Okay? So if assuming IEBC, because now we have got different motivations for people to also register voters, but looking at it, we've never passed the 68% voter turnout. But assuming we pass it, and I don't see, because the motivations for elections are also completely different, I'm looking at a situation where we might end up having around 17 million people casting their vote. Okay? So as an aspirant, if I was an aspirant today, what am I looking at? I'm looking at how do I get to the 8.5 million? So I can today predict here that the person who will hit 8.5 million votes in the next election will be the president. Okay? So it is not the business of politicians to look for where is that 8.5 million
coming from.
Yes.
Okay.
So out of that 8.5 million votes, as I've told you, potentially, those who are going to be registered as voters, potentially, we have an additional 6 million voters, potentially, that we should be registered. And by the way, those who are going to be registered afresh do not necessarily mean that they are young people. They are older people who did not vote previously, but are still also going to get registered. However, 80 to 90% of them still would be the young people. So of these 8.5 million votes that we are looking to hit, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It could be the young, it could be the old, it could be a tribal vote or whatever. But the politicians have to be very careful of the young voter, because potentially we're having 6 million of them going to be registered. Not all of them probably will vote.
Will vote, yeah.
But if you whip them to register as voters, then, and they have a reason to register as voters, and eventually have a reason to actually vote, then I think such a politician who takes a lead in that initiative stands a better chance of winning the next general election. Yes.
OKITE, you mentioned that at every general election, the motivation for people to show up and vote vary, by the way. Very people show up to vote for different reasons.
Yes.
We've had a time with a government where people have been so displeased. You know, people are not trusting what they're saying. People are not, like, it's like we don't even want to hear.
Yes.
What are some of the reasons you think people will show up in large numbers? And let's talk about young people, you and I, our friends, the mbogi, you know, the guys you go to the joint with, the guys you're in the sports club with, us young people. What do you think from a personal perspective are some of the reasons that will make people not sleep and show up and actually cast their votes?
So there are three angles I'll look at that. In an election, people vote for two different reasons.
Okay.
There are people who vote for someone. Okay.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Yeah, okay. Then there are people who wake up to vote against someone.
Against someone. I don't know who I want, but I don't want Wendy.
I don't know who I want, but I don't want Wendy. Okay. So if I'm given a stone and Wendy, then
I would rather
vote for a stone to lead me than Wendy. Okay. And then,
Do
of
you
course,
think that's where we are going in 2027?
yes. That is the major motivation.
We don't want the government. We don't know who else is coming,
Yes,
but
and
the
I'm going to
government
explain that
must
shortly.
go. Okay.
Yes, I'm going to explain that shortly and even back it with the numbers.
Okay.
And then the third reason, there are people who vote because they understand why they want to vote. Okay? And I'm going to hypothetically use the current political formations to actually explain what I'm trying to say. In 2022, and probably what is going to happen in 2027, the current president, I don't think if those from central Kenya, the traditional central Kenya, were voting because they loved him. They were voting against a system regime, okay?
Yeah.
Truth be said, the previous president did so much bad in this country. The economy has never been wasted like he did. But now the problem with it is...
OKITE, wait.
Yes.
And I appreciate the way you're following with your chain of thoughts.
Yes.
The previous president did worse than the one we have currently?
No, what I'm now saying is the problem we are having is that the current president has no clue on how to fix this economy. He is worse
than.
And it makes somebody who was worse look like an angel.
Okay.
That's the problem we have as a country. Okay,
I hear you.
President Ruto is making Uhuru look like an angel. Uhuru did the worst kind of economic damage that you can have in this country. And another time when I talk about economics, I could give you explanations. That, the biggest problem today in our economy is that we can't. By the time the last speech by Mwai Kibaki in Jamhuri, the Jamhuri celebration is final. In that speech, he indicated that as a country, we're able to run the entire budget by just 95% of our taxes.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had created a sustainable economy. Okay. But he brought in the borrowing. And within 10 years, he borrowed more than 10 point something trillion. And still within the same 10 years, we have, the Auditor General is saying that we have uncompleted projects worth 10 trillion.
So that shows the money we borrowed.
If Uhuru Kenyatta would have just taken the money he borrowed
and
just completed the roads, completed the TVETs, did whatever he did, then we would really be in a different level. We would have really set up the economy.
We would have been servicing a debt that did primarily what it was supposed to do.
But that didn't happen. So Uhuru did. So the current president is actually struggling because he is borrowing left, right, and center to actually pay debts and just to manage the situation. But then he's also not helping himself, right? And that's why we are going to talk about the costs and what he is supposed to do. He's not helping himself. I think probably because he is too difficult to advise, but also because he doesn't understand management. He's a politician, doesn't understand management. So that's a discussion for another day. But then, bring us back to the political discussion, is that the economic mismanagement and the lies and everything else that is happening is actually going to affect that election primarily. Yes, it is going to affect that election. So we can't wish away how you feel today, how a doctor today feels, how a teacher today feels. And I'll give you an example. Previously, TSC used to be the most trustworthy institution in terms of employment. There was a formula, they could advertise, and when they advertised, you could automatically knew. When do you graduate in 2017? I graduated in 2018. We could actually go there and say, hey, I'm taking this job. You wait for next time.
Exactly.
There was a formula to it, okay?
I agree.
Today, people are distributing TSC employment letters, okay? So I have a friend, for instance, who went to an office and somebody else gave 400,000 and was taken by TSC, and she didn't have that, and she was with the father. How does that economic mismanagement, that's a governance issue. How does it affect that voter? Okay?
Oh, no.
That's in terms of employment, okay?
Yeah.
How many industries or how many companies have been created in the last 5 years? That today, you would say, hey, nyewe, the government has really employed me, okay? How many industries are people working in? Even the Mjengo people, the president keeps on talking about. That somebody can say, now, today, I am working at courtesy of the government.
Yeah.
Okay? So those are questions of thought. And I think those are very, very significant issues that are going to affect this election. Yes, so we can't wish them well.
And OKITE, for me on a very personal level, a better part of last year, and I think I've mentioned it before on this podcast, I was working at a hospital.
Yes.
And OKITE, the time now we had the deadline for NHIF and the transition to SHIF and SHA.
Yes.
And to mention, this hospital was in the rural area, So primarily, all those people were covered through the government insurance for them to be able to access medical services. OKITE, it was so sad because I think from numbers like maybe 100 per month, 70, we dropped to 0. Because number one, we had no understanding and the community had no understanding of what is this new SHA, what is SHIF. So how do we get onboarded, And now there were rumors about how this system is going to work and how it's going to be implemented. And number two, the difficulty of now the system coming to play. We saw what happened to that lady who raised her concerns, and they walked to Afia House and said, some of these people come from far. Some of these people are struggling, but they've come all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital. The system is not working. But when it comes to pay, it surely is working. All right? But when it comes to dispensing payment for you to access the services, it's not working. OKITE, that shattered my heart. Because what it means is women go back to the village and they start giving birth from home. And if you imagine what that happens, it means mortality rate is going higher. Mothers are going to die. These kids being born are going to die. OKITE, for a very long time, it shattered my heart. And I said, you cannot be so inhuman that you don't care about such sensitive systems. The health system of a country. OKITE, we had people who were going through dialysis and were on these covers. Literally, if you miss 2-3 sessions, we are talking about something different. Organ failure, I don't know what. The economy is already very hard. So if your dependent is not getting treated. Yeah. And now the health condition has escalated. We don't even have the money. So I was just tying that to what you're saying. Have we had industries that have been brought up? I don't think so. It's the people who have been in the system who've actually been asked to go home. And that will truly affect how we will show up and turn up and vote. So
that tells you when you not only in the healthcare sector, but they have got other areas like the education sector. By the way, the education sector is one of the worst managed in this country. And it's so bad. And you see now, the problem with politicians is that they don't realize that this CBC mismanaging is affecting a mother somewhere. Okay, we no longer have any schools coming up. How many primary schools have been constructed afresh since 2002 in your village or anywhere by the government?
I doubt if there's any.
That's where now. I'm telling you that the government is so insensitive. And now the population is increasing, the kids are going to school, now CBC, teachers, talk to teachers. I'm a former teacher, and I have a lot of teacher friends. I mean, they're giving up. Not that they're bad teachers. They just now no longer care. Because nobody is equipping them to even understand whatever is going on. So all those economic, social, and all these factors will definitely affect the next general election. By how far or by how much, we still don't know. Because, the government is still in operation. We are hoping they do something surgical. But if they don't do, trust you me, they're going home high and dry, early in the morning.
For me, I wish we don't even listen to the surgical measures they will take. OKITE, we have seen them for who they are. If they can just go. Let's bring in the angle of unajua tumekuwa tukiimba kuwa it's high time tuache siasa za chama. You understand? And I remember even last year when we were going to the streets, we were like, si hatutaki politics ya chama anymore. We are leaderless, we are tribeless, we are all those things. But I think we haven't really grown the muscle to really do that you can do politics that are not directly affected by the parties, the political parties. So let's look at, with all these numbers, and are looking forward to having new voters. How will that affect the political demography, especially for parties? And will it influence now, parties saying, OKITE has more numbers, so you come. Or Wendy, I think you can have more influence over a certain region. How does that primarily look?
I'm going to actually be very blatant with the youth in this case.
Okay.
When it comes to reorganization of politicians, politicians will reorganize depending on how it has been traditionally. And the reason they do that is primarily because they want to attract political resources. There are very few people who can solely run a presidential campaign. And then for you now then to run for presidency, you then need political resources. So then you have to place yourself in a manner that makes you a viable candidate to then be able to attract the political campaign money to then be able to make you move around, okay? So that reorganization is going to take place. But there is a problem still as a society. When we had the movement, we have then seen political reorganizations. Raila and Ruto have moved in one direction. We are seeing where the rest of these people, that is Kalonzo, Gachagua, and the other people, they're also moving in another direction. And probably they will be together in that particular election, okay? There is a third force that has been there, and as a youth, we listen to it, but we never mention it anywhere.
Okay.
And there are two politicians I'll mention who have proper economic ideology that can help save this country, but nobody gives them attention. The first political aspirant that has come out clearly to give us a direction is Okia Omtata. Okay? And the second politician is Jimmy Wanjigi. All right? These two people have a very clear economic policy. They're saying, as a country, we are messed up because we have a lot of money that were borrowed and were stashed in people's pockets. And timeless. Okia has given out these numbers in parliament. He has given out these numbers in courts. He has shown us this, that we need a country where we can hold the previous finance ministers to account. The previous president to account. We auction their personal, if they can't. We have a robust legal framework in terms of how we need to do things, right from the Constitution to the Public Finance Management Act to the procurement, all this. It shows how we need to do things as a country. And then they also show if we don't do things right as a country, who then needs to be held to account, okay? But then there are people who have blatantly violated these things, and we have political aspirants telling us, listen, we are willing to bring these guys to account. Whether they will do it or not, that's a different question. But they're telling us, we are willing to declare odious debt. There are countries like Cuba and even Spain traditionally that had declared odious debt, okay? Because there's somebody who borrowed money, say, in the US, so for instance, the Eurobond. It never affected you in any way, but you're paying for it from your taxes. Why should you pay somebody else's debt? So we have a politician here who has told us, now listen, we are going to sort this economy. And the only way to sort this economy, one, is to sort out the issue of debts. Because the debt today is consuming up to around 60% of our taxes, okay? Number two, these two politicians are rightfully saying, we are going to move away from what we call economic or financial. We are not going to borrow from financial institutions, what we call the commercial loans, okay? We are going to go for what is called concessional loans. which are 2-3%. But somehow, somewhere in the government, somebody has found it comfortable to borrow at 8-10%, and it is hurting the economy. So, to answer your question, as the youth and as a people who are learned, we are failing the country. We are failing ourselves because there is somebody, for instance, Okia Omtata, for instance, Jim Wanjigi. I don't know who any other person. I can see Maraga today is talking about justice. He is not very clear in terms of what he wants to do. So that is one angle that we have to look at it. We have to look for somebody that I'm going to vote for so and so because of what he says, right?
Yeah.
Number two, now there are the reorganizations that are a reality of our campaign today. That is the Raila Ruto versus the Gachagua Kalonzo blah blah.
And the rest.
Okay? So these two factions, when you look at the numbers as at today, then you realize once again that the race to 2027 is also another tight one. Okay, there are three ways to look at the numbers. One, you look at the counties that are likely to vote outrightly for Raila Ruto. Okay, then you look at there are counties today. Whether you go and shout economics, whether you go and shout what, you can't wish away the fact that Elgeyo Marakwet County, as the way there are 500 and something thousand registered voters, 96% of those registered voters will not listen to anything. Whether they are suffering
even
or
the
not.
way life has become so tough, OKITE,
First you mean-
who is not seeing what the
Life
government
was
has
very
done?
tough during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. I'm telling you, Uhuru messed this country. Okay?
Yeah.
Life was tough during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. But nobody dared to listen.
But it's tougher now.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the reality is what we wish for, the problem with politics is there's a difference between what we wish for and what will happen. Okay? Today, in my county, for instance, Siaya County, I was there for the last 1 month. They know very well, Raila has joined so-and-so.
Exactly.
Okay? And I'll give you an example. The small region where I grew up, Usenge, on average, electricity is on for 4 hours out of 24 hours a day. The other 20 hours is blackout.
Wow.
Opio Wandai is the Minister for Energy today. Opio Wandai has declared his interest to run for governor. But nobody cares. Nobody cares. They're just saying, will he run with ODM? So to bring in the angle of the party, okay? Will he was here the other day. That's what they're saying. Agatugonyo gave us something, you see. So this, it's also illiteracy. It's also emotions. It's also campaign strategy, campaign funding, because if Okia Omtata today is having good policies, but he cannot go and talk to that voter in Usenge there, it is useless. There is a voter in Wajir who doesn't know him, doesn't follow anything online, okay? So the campaign resources then come in, who then can be able to reach. So the realities of 2027 is that we are still going to have the two large factions. The only difference is that we're going to have the third force is going to be a little bit. We're not going to see those who are winning around 200,000 votes. They're going to have votes in millions.
Okay.
Yes. But when you look at these two factions, we are looking at it in terms of the Raila side and Ruto side. So when you want to understand those numbers, you look at the counties that actually gave, say, Raila side 70% of the vote. And then the Ruto side, 70% of the vote. Okay?
Yeah.
And then you now combine them. Their vote turnout, how it's going to come out. Then we ask ourselves, the other side, which counties again, or which numbers again are likely to go to them? Because remember, there are regions in this country that are going to vote against Raila and they're going to vote against Ruto. And there's somebody also who is just going to wake up and vote against Gachagua. He doesn't care. He doesn't want. As long as Gachagua is in this box or is in this team, I'm not voting in that box, okay? Then you have the swing vote. Okay? So I'll tell you, I'll run the numbers. You know, right now people think Ruto has won this election. He has not. Okay? Nairobi County, for example, has 2.4 million registered voters. He's probably going to only get half of it.
Okay, I feel so bad when you say that half is quite a number. I thought it was going to be a landslide. That, oh my God. Anyway, proceed.
because again, you look at as I've told you, Wendy, what we wish for
is not what will
is
happen.
not what we. Yes.
So all factors put into
So let's talk
consideration,
about,
he gets the other half.
Yes, let's talk about those who will not vote for, the counties that will not vote for Ruto. Okay?
Yeah.
So I've told you, half of Nairobi will not vote for Ruto. So that's around 1.2 million votes, okay?
Yeah.
Kiambu County will not vote for Ruto, no matter what he does. That's another 1 million vote. We're at
2.2.
Nakuru County will not vote for Ruto.
Must go.
Okay? That's another 1 million vote, registered voters. Okay? Muranga County won't vote for Ruto. That's 770,000 votes.
Okay. 3.9.
You're looking at Nyeri, another 300,000 won't vote for Ruto.
Okay.
You're looking at Nyandarua, that's another 200,000. You're looking at Tarakaniti, 200,000. So when you look at the central Meru County, okay, so those votes were in Ruto's basket, but they won't vote for Ruto. Okay. Another critical area that you need to look at in the next election, you asked about regional rebalancing. Makueni County will not vote for Ruto. Machakos County will not vote for Ruto. Kitui County will not vote for Ruto. Okay? Look at the areas like Machakos have 0.6 million votes. Okay? So these are very, Makueni 0.5 million votes. So when you look at the regions that will not vote for Ruto and you add them, I can assure you it's around 8.5 million votes.
What he needs.
What he will not get, what I am sure these counties Ruto is not getting. Out of these registered, I mean, in this case, I'm talking about those, of course, I'm looking at 70% of the vote. Okay? 70% of the vote. Then I'm looking at the counties that outrightly votes for Ruto.
Yeah.
Well, this I'm talking about Kakamega, 800,000 votes. Siaya County, 531,000 votes. Kisumu, 600,000 votes. I'm looking at Homa Bay, 400 and something thousand votes. Migori, I'm looking at Elgeyo Marakwet, Bomet, Baringo, Kericho. Those ones, if you add those votes that outrightly are voting for Ruto, it's just 7.4 million votes.
Okay, let's dwell there for a minute.
Yes.
The Lake region.
Yes.
Na tusonge hapo juu, Kakamega, Western region. We've had a problem with that demographic of people, especially the Luya block, because when we come together in unison, that's a big block with big numbers. But I think there's so many sub-tribes in it, makes it very tricky. Who is with Mudavadi? Who is with Wamalwa? Who is with... But having their kingpins against him, are they still gonna vote for him? And then I know kwa ground kumekuwa na shift of, I know we've been loyal Baba fans, but the way things are, there's a good percentage that has said, now let's vote for the reality. Will he get numbers those areas?
Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So that is the very thing you've mentioned about the Western region. That is the very thing that made Raila lose last election. That there are only two things that made Raila lose last election. Number one was his underestimation of the small tribes.
Yeah.
So Ruto defeated Raila with the 200,000 votes only. Okay?
Yeah.
But Bungoma County, Ruto got 250,000 votes. Somewhere that was traditional Raila's vote block. And because he chased away Weta, the guy went back, spoke to those guys in vernacular, in Bukusu, was there every day. And that single county was a
Give
shift.
him the numbers, yeah.
And it beat Raila down. Okay? The second miscalculation that I think Raila had was bringing in Martha Karua as a running mate at the expense of Kalonzo. I think so. Because Martha Karua didn't change numbers.
Yeah.
Yes. If you look at what Raila got in Central in 2017 versus 2022, the difference is 121,000 votes. So
that's the only weight she brought to the table.
Yes, they were trying to do that tribal card in bringing her in. Okay, so I think that was a mistake that they did. To answer your question, are people tired of Raila and his shenanigans and Ruto and blah blah? The answer is yes. But how do they give that answer? They give that answer by not voting.
Which is the
An
wrong thing to do.
average intelligent Luo young man or woman from the lakeside or Luya or anywhere else would not decide to go and vote against where Baba is saying. They would rather not vote. Okay? Instead of going to vote for Wendy, who is running in this election, and Baba has said OKITE, they would rather
not to vote
let me not go and
altogether.
vote. Okay? So that is one of the very critical areas why I still think also President Ruto might be in for a strong, a big surprise in the coming election, because the moment he dumped the central side, he then decided to bring in Raila on board. But the problem with Raila's vote block is that Raila's vote block then is not going to vote in 2027. They're not going to vote. I've spoken to very many of them. Mbogi,
they will not show up to vote.
No, they are not. Nobody is spending his transport, hard-earned money, to come out of Nairobi, to go in the village, to vote for Ruto because Raila has told him. They would go, yes, to vote for Raila. Okay? Because Raila is who he is.
Yeah.
Okay? But they would not go and vote because Raila has told them. They would rather, let it take care of itself. So there will be serious voter apathy in Nyanza. And the last election, the four Nyanza, Luo Nyanza counties had only around 58% voter turnout. We are expecting worse.
In 2027.
In 2027. So that is a rude shock for Ruto. On the contrary, those who are voting against Ruto, is their motivation for voting likely to increase? For instance, the Kamba Nation, if Kalonzo is the flag bearer, if their son is the flag bearer, are they likely to increase their voter turnout or decrease? Now, again, in the central region, the two people who have been constantly there, Raila has been constantly their enemy, per se, and now Ruto has now betrayed them, as they're saying. Now they are on the same side. Do they have enough reason to come and now the economics of the day is also hitting them hard. The Kikuyu nation, give it respect to them. These guys do a lot of business. The food basket, the warus, they are doing a lot of business. And these are the things that are hurting them, okay? The milk issue. You saw Ruto the other day talking about the milk issue. Something like milk, when the middle class doesn't have enough money in their pocket, the demand goes down. Okay?
True.
So these are guys who are doing their honest business and they're filling the grant. And let me tell you what is the problem with it. The problem with it is also they are not also able to access capital because nobody does business out of their pocket, largely. They want to borrow. The interest rates are at the roof. The banks are choosing to lend to the government as opposed to lending to the people. So these are the factors that affect them. Probably he does not understand why it is affecting them. There's a Anjuguna somewhere, seated down, goes to the bank, it bounces, but he doesn't understand that, you see, the government is borrowing, that's why you are not able to get it.
Yeah.
But he feels that because I don't have a capital, I'm not then able to do this and this. You saw the other time the issue of the agriculture issue. So these are issues that are coming up. So this is a community that predominantly is affected by the agriculture of the day, the industrialization of the day, because they own hardware, they own, they expect construction materials, So this is what is affecting them. These businesses are not moving. So it's not about Kikuyu as a tribe, but it's Kikuyu about as what defines the Kikuyu. What defines the Kikuyu man, woman is the fact that they're then able to, they are industrious. But that industrious nature of them is not coming out. They're not feeling the fruits. So that is what is actually affecting them. Okay? So they have a better motivation. So there will be bigger turnout in those areas. So that's why I also think that aspect of turnout is likely to affect this election.
Okay.
Yes.
OKITE, and I want to mention I'm so grateful to have you here today. And at SpeakUp Africa, we aim to engage people in civic education, and enlighten people and empower them so that we can make informed decisions and better decisions. And in our conversation, that has come out so strongly that there are people who And you cannot say they're not educated or they're not learned. I don't know if it's ignorance or what. Because if people are still saying, because Baba has said, let's vote for Wendy, you know, I will therefore let the elections take care of itself.
Yes.
On a very personal level, I feel like that is a sad way. And that
Very
is
sad.
why I try as hard as I can to bring these conversations to the people. And I hope that you have mentioned that it will give a young person or young people a nudge to get a different point of view of things. Because if you don't vote,
Yes.
and somebody said, even when we were doing the demonstrations last year, we did not vote for these leaders to get into office. And now we are asking for them to be accountable. All right. So wait for the next general elections and vote in the people that you want.
Yes.
So if we are not going to show up and vote because the parties or the leaders that we really look up to have not, one, we are either not agreeing with the leaders they are giving us, or two, they have not shown us what to do. Therefore, we are not doing anything. I think we are doing a disservice to ourselves and to our nation, because I think at this point, you're even saying, if you're out there and you're saying, you know, me, I'm not involved in politics, or, you know, me, I don't like politics. We have seen how politics affect our day-to-day lives. Politics will affect your economy. Politics will affect your health. Politics will affect your level of education.
Yes.
It affects all facets of life. So, do you think if more civic education is done intentionally, even to the rural areas, that it can change the numbers, that people will say, okay, you know what, let's take an example of what you've said, Mbogi and the rest. And Mbogi is just a group of friends that comes together. If more civic education is done, if more sensitization is done, if more of these conversations are had and the realities are taken to them, might it just change things?
I think civic education plays a very critical or central role in shaping elections, okay? But how, this is a personal view. There are two things as we end up on this. One, the learned and the middle class and those who understand really what's going on are the people failing this country because then they don't give direction. And by giving direction, I mean, I have looked at politicians today. I'm not giving a politician my vote based without somebody describing for me exactly what they need to do. And by that, I mean something tangible. The problem we have as a country is we have politicians who have decided to then they're busybodies. For instance, today, ask NPs what they're doing. They'll tell you they're giving bursaries. Okay? They're not doing anything tangible. The education system, I mean, if you look at the Energy CDF Act, it empowers, I mean, it gives the MPs the powers to actually have effect in the education. But is there an MP today you know of who has come out and say, for instance, has deliberately decided and say, in my constituency, I'm going to deliberately build classes to capacity, labs to capacity, and equip them. And then number two, I'm going to then ensure teachers in my constituency are well trained for this CBC. I don't need to do the entire constituency. I need to take 5 schools per year. I'm going to take these 5 schools and ensure that every equipment they ever need for CBC is ready. If it is science, okay? As an MP, that's what I'm going to do. So that next year, I'm going to do another 5 schools. So that in 5 years, there are 25 schools
that have
in a constituency that have full capacity or to handle CBC, that have full capacity. I mean, the teachers are well trained. Is there an MP who is doing that, for instance? There is none. Look at the governors. I was looking at the debate around Susan Kihika, and it took me to check what Lee Kinyanjui was doing before her. Lee Kinyanjui was very passionate about the medical aspect. He did a very big hospital in Nakuru. He expanded these other ones. He did construction. But instead of Susan Kihika coming and carrying on with that plan
the legacy
and saying,
here,
let me equip this, let me then do this, she decided to do her own things. I see on her timeline, just doing roads, etc. There is no proper strategic plan around how we run our counties, how we run our constituencies. And that's where I call upon professionals, the middle class, to offer that direction.
Mm.
Then when we have a group of aspirants, the professionals in an area, say a county, for instance, can say, now, as professionals, we are then going to shape how this election at this stage is going to come out. They do shape it, but then they have to shape it in a manner that there is tangible definition of what is supposed to be done, and it is a realistic and there's a strategic plan to which it can follow. That is the only way to save this country. Secondly, we then are faced with the option. The option then is to let this country collapse. Okay? The best economies today, the likes of Singapore, those who have also taken up like Vietnam, essentially the Asian tigers. They began their journey when there was serious economic collapse. I think we should get into a stage where today we are servicing our debt to the extent that we can't, we are really just trying to manage and we're not managing. I think we need a serious collapse of parastatals. A lot of them are collapsing so that the middle class can fail to pay their bills. We need a serious collapse of the economic space so that the government can fail to pay you salaries.
So that you feel the intensity.
So I think that is the alternative that we should be faced with as a country. For us to really wake up, we should get to that space where these guys have looted so much that now there's a total economic collapse. At that moment, as a country, we will pick it up and we will never go back because we shall have felt the brunt of what actually a collapsed economy is. To finalize on that as an economist, let people not think that an economic collapse is a spontaneous event. There's no day we will wake up and say, now today on 3rd of April, the economy has collapsed, right? Economic collapse is a gradual event. It is about what we call, it is about observing what we call we have macroeconomic factors and microeconomic factors. Then we have, for instance, when we look at labor economics, we just need to look at how many more people are getting employed, and then not only getting employed, but the employed, are they happy? Okay? Are they doing their jobs? Are they progressing? Okay? How many strikes are we facing? Vis-a-vis how many strikes are we not facing?
Yeah.
We need to look at the elements like, that's labor economics. We need to look at when the government is saying, for instance, interest rates, we need to look at the numbers really. How many people are really borrowing for business? Okay? If the government is talking about, for instance, exchange rate, and the president has been running around talking about the exchange rate, you need to really ask yourself, what are the numbers in terms of exports versus imports? Because whatever they have done in this and made these numbers go down, nobody is understanding what the CBK is doing to maintain these numbers, but I can assure you they will not be here for long. In the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to feel, because the only way to maintain a stable exchange rate is through the balance of exports and imports. So whatever the government, the CBK have done, we don't know, but it is going to bring a serious collapse in this country, probably after 2027. We don't know. So the government has to be very deliberate in terms of not only looking at the macroeconomic factors, don't mention to us employment, don't mention to us interest rates, don't mention to us foreign exchange rates. Those things don't matter. What matters today is now the microeconomic factors of the economy. If you're talking about the employment rate and employment and what have you, the question is, have the people been employed? And even those employed, are they happy?
Yeah.
And institutions that are employing them, are they then expanding in a manner that then allows, if Wendy today is employed at this rate, they are then able to go to rate number 2.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
If you are talking about, I saw somebody talking about numbers in terms of repayment of debts, okay? The issue is, if we are picking debts, I want to know that there's a debt that has been taken and it has been used to construct a certain industry. So it, for instance, has been invested in sugar industry, and now the Western region, say, has woken up. Or there's a loan that has been taken And the government then goes straight away to the coast and says, the port has for a long time just been one port. It is congested. It's not giving us what it is. What we need to do is to open another port. So the government takes a loan and opens a new port. So then we have more imports. Those that would have gone to Mogadishu, those that would have gone to Dar es Salaam are now coming into Kenya. And when that happens, that is now how the economy then grows. Okay, we have more logistic companies. We then have more tourists also coming in. Okay, we want the government to tell us. Ruto should not come telling us that the price of I've subsidized this for coffee farmers, or this for tea farmers, or this for milk farmers, or dairy farmers. That is not what a dairy farmer wants. What a dairy farmer wants is an economy that people can afford his milk.
Exactly. A marketplace to take their produce and products.
What a dairy farmer wants is a good road so that his milk, no matter mashinani where it is, it can then reach Nairobi very quickly.
Kweli.
What we need today is KCC working. Okay? If KCC can work today, that would be okay for a dairy farmer. So that he's very sure, this is my cow. It then has to. So to in a nutshell, as a country, we are faced with two options. We either, and from the middle class perspective, we must be deliberate about educating our people and talking to them, and also shaping the politics. We look at aspirants as early as possible. That today, for instance, we have, say, Babu Owino versus, say, Gakuya in Nairobi. Middle class must have very proper conversations about what Babu is offering versus what Gakuya is offering, versus what Wetangula is offering, Weta's brother is offering, and then present to the people, even the low class, an option. Because remember, believe it or not, that low class is depending on the middle class, directly or indirectly. So if I am sending my old auntie money at home every month, then I should be able to say now, auntie, please vote for Wendy. That is how we as the middle class can then shape the politics. Otherwise, we have the option of collapse of the economy, and that will be a really, really sad state.
And OKITE, the reality is there's been a bulge for quite some time of the middle class. And the truth is, this is a population of people that really cared less. Didn't show up to vote. Like, because you can afford your day-to-day, you're less concerned about the pertinent issues in the society. But what this economy and this government has done is that there slowly has been a curve of people now going back, and their status is going lower and not going higher. So I really hope that this will be taken as an awakening call, because people have been rendered jobless. We have seen foreign aid being taken up. So it's like literally lights on, lights off. You are forced to now, you're servicing loans. I can't imagine how awful that predicament is, But I hope this will be an awakening call, and we'll continue having civic conversations. So we've talked about the numbers. Let's finalize at alternative options. So MPs earn, MPs borrow. This is what they earn versus this is what they do for us, and this is what they deliver. And so what are alternative options?
This is where the big, as I've said, the biggest problem with our country is not lack of resources. The biggest problem we have as a country is where we direct those resources. Okay. And that's where I was talking about the middle class and how we can influence government policies. I mean, it's a long shot, but even those who are advising the president, we must not, the way this country is structured today, for me, I really think the voter must not think about too much about the presidency at the expense of the governor and the MP. Okay?
I agree.
These two critical areas, I mean, they control the education system. The governor controls the pre-primary education system. Probably the primary education system is not controlled, but then the MP can have a say in terms of how they want to shape that. The governors, they control the healthcare system. Okay? And nobody has barred the governors from initiating economic development in their regions. And so what we have as a country is, if the national government has failed, then I think I really would wish to have model leaders. we have a problem in this country. The biggest problem with this country, even those who work, is that we have a lot of PR. Okay. For instance, looking at today, because there's a photo of Irungu Kangata having mobile clinic running around his county, everybody else, it is
copy and paste.
Okay. I mean, it's commendable. He has done something.
Yeah.
But these are things Tuju began doing in the constituency as early as 2 or 3. Okay. What is the problem with, we've seen Governor Oparanya in Kakamega County build a 6 billion hospital in less than 5 years. So, while this is a stopgap measure, what is it doing differently to ensure that now the problem of, that mobile clinic is being fueled, the doctors are being paid. So tomorrow, if Kangata is out of office, what happens?
It goes with him.
Yes. So as the alternative we have as a country is to get into a space where we have to involve the professionals. And this is why I want to speak from a professional perspective. I'm looking at, for instance, one of the projects I'm handling for one of the MPs, where we disagreed in terms of where he wants to invest the money for something. No, my issue today is our MPs, our governors, our everything, including an MCA, do not have strategic plans. I'm not calling it a manifesto, because a manifesto has no KPIs.
Exactly.
Okay?
It's
even
how
the
will you
president,
implement what you're telling us.
even the president does not have a clue of how to run this country. This country must then be taken into the hands. I mean, the professionals, the MBAs of this country. I thought Ruto with his PhD would think. He doesn't. We must get into a space where we have, at a constituency level, at a women rep level, at a governor level, there's a strategic plan to be followed. That in the following, for my 5 years, yes, I've been employed, I've been voted in as a governor, you bring in professionals, and then you ask of them, for you in the medical sector, what are we looking at?
Exactly.
We are not solving all your problems, but today...
How do we make progress?
Yes, how do we make progress? We have how many hospitals? Okay? And even new things. I mean, the world is moving. Well, I keep on wondering, why can't, for instance, we have serious cancer prevalent issues in Meru area and Embu areas. It is alleged that the government did do something there previously in the 90s, and that's what is actually causing that.
Yeah.
The question is, what is preventing the Meru County government from setting up a world-class cancer facility that would then make it work? Let people come from other areas to come, and that's what promotes the economics of that area.
Local place, yeah.
What prevents my county, for instance, to have a tourism hub? We have the lake. We have got Ramogi, the cradle of Luo community. I mean, people would wander all the way from the US to come and check, where did this community come from? We have land. Okay, we have animals. So what is preventing, say, Governor Orengo today from saying, what we're going to do for the next 5 years, we're going to create a model tourism center. Or we're going to create the fish industry. 83% of the fish consumed in this country comes from China.
True.
Okay? Dominion Farm had shown us in that region that we can actually do what? Keep fish. Billy Ojiwa, for instance, a very serious fish farmer in Uganda. But then, how come the county government cannot say that now, for us this year, we're going to concentrate on empowering fish farms? Okay?
Yeah.
Why can't somebody in the coast, for instance, in the southern coast, there's a lot of land, a lot of it. We don't need all these industries in Nairobi.
And I think that is what county devolution ideally was supposed to do.
Correct.
But primarily never did.
Yes, that's what. So as a country, the alternative that we have is we must get to a space, we must strive to get into a space where we call upon our leaders to first define what they need to do for us. It is peppered, and then this paperwork then is then done what? Is then implemented slowly by slowly. That is how we can make progress as a country.
Okay.
Yes.
Okite, thank you so much for coming. I mean, I would love for us to keep going on and on, but be sure Okite is coming back to now talk about economics, and for all the wisdom that you've given us here today. We are grateful. But I want to encourage us, Okite, even for you, when you go to your small circles,
Yes.
this is the kind of civic education we want to do. We are moving away from barazas and sitting under trees. It's you being your brother's keeper. It's the people who are educated and learned being able, and I like the analogy you've given. If you're supporting your aunt back at home,
Yes.
you know, you can provide for them, but you can also empower them with knowledge. So
yes.
just wind up and tell us, how do we find you? Where do we find you? What are you passionate about? And one word, strictly a second, to the young viewers out there, and we wrap it up.
I'm OKITE LINUS on my socials, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm not a TikTok person. I'm really trying to to find myself to get to TikTok. Primarily, I'm passionate about strategic plans, strategic implementation, data-backed businesses, so that when you're starting something, you just don't start from, hey, nimesikia kabiashara.
Exactly.
What are the numbers speaking about it, okay? And even now, as we go to the next election, we are getting into a space at where we are helping aspirants comb the numbers, redesign their messaging, their strategies. So for me and my friends, we are forming a company called Genius Age, where we just want to develop strategic frameworks around numbers. That is what exactly has made the Western world way better than what is happening in Africa, in Kenya and in Africa as a whole. Those guys deal with numbers. And I'll give a short example as we wind up. I developed a strategic plan for a group of 3 Indians who are seeking to open a business in UAE. And these guys are primarily about numbers. And when you go to the technological aspect of that plan, they were like, we have to develop the website, and this website has to generate for us the numbers, how many are visiting. These guys, they look at numbers. The world is growing so that we don't look at things in an abstract way. So that's what I do to just help people in business. And also in terms of investments, we look at what are the numbers in this company. Those who want to buy shares.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? I mean, what is the historical aspect of it? What are the few predictions? Yeah. Yes. So to do generally what is called predictive analysis, that's what I do. To speak to the youth, I think we need to be more vocal in our small circles, but we also need to be very realistic. Let us not be told that Wendy is good, but Wendy hazy. So it is only you who can make Wendy to weza.
Exactly.
So my hope for the next election is we get into a space where if somebody is doing the right thing, is the right aspirant, we don't wish them off. Instead, we combine our small voices so that then we are then able to make it a larger voice. That's all I have for the youth today.
Okay. Okite, you have encouraged the educated people, the elite, to be part of the political game, because therefore when it comes to execution, we need those brains. And you're brilliant, you're fantastic, you're realistic, you deal with the numbers. Yes or no? Are you having any political aspirations in the near future?
No.
In the far future?
No.
Thank you so much for being here. At SpeakUp Africa, we continue to give you insightful conversations. We continue to equip you with the knowledge and the power and the tools that you need to make more informed and powerful decisions. And we are crying out and we are saying, even as we gather momentum to disrupt the conversations and gear up to the next general election, civic education is a responsibility for you and me, for us to take up our duties and our roles, to participate in political conversations, to participate in political procedures and processes that affect you and I. And there is an awakening that is happening. And my call is that you and I be part of this time to bring the change that we want to see, because you and I are the change that we need. My name is Wendy Lois. I have been your host at SpeakUp Africa. I will love and leave you for now and see you on our next episode. Kwaheri.
SpeakUp Africa is a digital platform that creates space for digital conversations to be made, specifically from end-to-end usage, from the users of the technological spaces, to the producers of it, to the creators, to the innovators, to the labor rights, to the policy increments, to governance, and all other technological dimensions. This is SpeakUp Africa. I am Zaha Speaks. We inform, engage, and empower.